Hi magic lovers, welcome back to another reading from book 1 in my Jack and the Magic Hat Maker called The Golden Telescope. Today I will be reading chapter 18, Rescue. Before I get started with that, let me just quickly apologize for not getting this uploaded yesterday. I'm getting on track, but I'm not quite there yet. So at least I'm committed to 3 times a week at a minimum of uploading new video content. So, but I hope that you'll forgive me for that. And also, before we get going, if you would just take a moment to subscribe to my channel if you like this content, and please do feel free to share this with your family and friends who also enjoy listening to stories like this. Ring that bell and give me a thumbs up if you like this story. All right, moving right along, let's get back into the story. What is going on with Jack? So, chapter 18, Rescue. Portland, Oregon, present day. Jack was slumped on his bed. What in the world am I going to do now? Getting up, he walked to the small window and cautiously pulled the corner of the shabby beige curtain away from the wall, just enough to sneak a peek outside. Sure enough, there was Victor, standing about 20 feet away, arms folded, staring in Jack's direction. He was still wearing the same black leather bomber jacket and beanie he had on earlier. Crap! He quickly released the drape and jumped back away from the window, heat rising in his cheeks. He was furious. They weren't kidding. Am I a prisoner now or something? He paced back and forth. Think. How can I reach Bart? Looking around his small space, he began searching for anything that might be of some use. Short of sending smoke signals, he had nothing. And even that was a joke. He couldn't start a fire with what was in his room to save his life. And he was afraid saving his life was precisely what he required at this moment. He flopped back down on the flimsy red and gray plaid blanket covering most of his mattress. Maybe I can try to sneak out the front door while they're sleeping. That might be my best shot. Scanning the room, his eyes landed on a black handle poking out from under his bed. He bent over and pulled out the dust-covered overnight bag he used for camping and sleepovers at Bart's. I should pack. He slapped the bag a few times, then tossed it down and unzipped. He stood staring at the thing for a few moments, trying to sort through his life's possessions, not entirely sure what was essential and what wasn't when running away. Toiletries, he thought. Then grimaced at the prospect of going upstairs to the bathroom, facing his aunt and uncle again. Then an idea struck him. There was a window in that bathroom. Arthur stood invisible and undetected in the corner of a dank, poorly lit basement. Across the room, standing over a badly chipped black metal bed, was Jack. He recalled the small figure sleeping soundly in his bed all those years ago, and smiled fondly at the memory. The boy had grown into a young man, and his dark chocolate hair had become considerably more wild, as he was continually brushing it out of his eyes. He was slender, had fair skin and delicate features, and was wearing a soft-looking gray turtleneck with faded blue jeans. Arthur frowned, listening to Jack talking out loud to himself, clearly agitated and in search of something. After his experience attempting to retrieve Ethan, Arthur was nervous about how he should approach this encounter with Ross and Faith's younger son. So he stood silently, assessing the situation. No, That window's too narrow. There's no way I'll get out through there." The boy mumbled under his breath, closing his eyes and rubbing them with the thumb and forefinger of his right hand before thoughtfully stroking his jawline. He shook his head back and forth. "Even if I got out, Victor is right there." He groaned and turned around, dropping onto the bed once more. This was all the convincing Arthur needed. The butler removed his plain brown hat, unveiling himself, and gently smoothed the strands of chestnut-colored hair back into place. "Jack," he said softly. Jack shot up off the bed and whipped around to look at the space behind him. Standing before him was a distinguished-looking gentleman in a gray-brown suit, holding two hats in his left hand and placing the index finger of his right to his fingers. "Shh," he whispered. "I'm here to help you." Who are you?" Jack asked in a surprised whisper. "And how'd you get in here?" Adrenaline was coursing through Jack's veins. This final surprise was all the shock Jack's body needed to initiate an attack. He began wheezing, his breath coming in fits and spurts, and there was the familiar tightness in his chest that caused him such intense discomfort. Digging into his pants pocket, he pulled out his inhaler and shoved it into his mouth. The man watched as he did this, concern evident in his furrowed brow. Arthur waited for Jack to recover before cautiously proceeding to answer his questions. "My name is Arthur," he finally replied. "Your grandfather, Edward, sent me to rescue you," he said. Shuffling the hats in his left hand, he grabbed onto the smaller newsboy-style one and held it out. "Here, I have a photo of you with your family. It's the same picture your father carried around with him inside his military hat. I brought it, hoping it would help you believe me." Jack watched him warily, still not moving. How could he trust this random stranger who had just popped into his room? But at the same time, this man felt different. "Please don't be afraid," Arthur continued. "I know you're in danger, and your grandfather wanted nothing more than to help you." Jack walked slowly around the end of the bed, moving cautiously toward Arthur so that he could get close enough to peer down into the hat. Observing its contents, he reached inside and removed the photo, then looked up at Arthur. "I need to see this in better light," he said, and he motioned to the lamp next to the bed. "You stay here," he said, putting his hand up, and then as an afterthought, "Please." And he turned away, walking to the other side of the room. Jack bent over the little table and pulled the photo closer to his face, analyzing. "You're the smaller boy, standing in front of your dad. Your mom is holding Sadie, and your older brother, Ethan, is standing next to you." Jack stood up and looked at him. "What's that funny accent you've got?" he asked. "Where are you from?" Jack started walking back toward Arthur when the squeak of a door opening at the top of the staircase made them freeze. "Quickly, there's no time to explain," Arthur said under his breath. "Put on this hat. I brought it for you. It's a transporter." Jack's eyes shot from the strange man before him to his bedroom door and back again. His heart was hammering in his chest. "You can trust me, Jack," Arthur said. "I'll take you to safety." There was something about the man's eyes that communicated trust, loyalty, love even. Jack listened anxiously as the heavy heavy footsteps descended the stairs on the other side of his bedroom door. Then, grabbing the cap from Arthur's hand, he raised his arm to place it on his head. "Take my hand." Arthur reached out, simultaneously placing his own hat on his head, and they vanished. Chapter 19. Transparency. Portland, Oregon, present day. An awkward silence filled the space where Jack had been. Pulling his dark green and yellow ball cap down close to the bridge of his nose and shoving both hands between his knees, Bart's body language was clear. "I'm irritated. Don't talk to me." Bill glanced sideways at his son a couple of times as he drove. "I know you're mad, Bart. I don't blame you. I'd be mad too if I were you." He looked at Bart for a reaction. "But we really do need to talk. I honestly didn't want to dump all of that info on you like that, but my hand was forced by the urgency of Jack's situation." Silence. Bart's eyes were glued to the passing scenery out the window. It was a typical Northwest spring evening, and light rain left the streets shiny and slippery. "Look, I knew I was cutting things close with your age and all, but I just haven't known how to approach the subject with you. So I put it off longer than I should have. I'm really sorry." Bill looked again at his son. "Just say whatever you're thinking. Tell me you're angry. Say you feel betrayed. I'd totally get that." Bart looked at his father. His eyebrows sank into a frown. "Okay, you want me to tell you what I think? You're freaking right, I'm angry. And yeah, I do feel betrayed. What you revealed to us back there is that you're some kind of magical freak. And if that's not bad enough, I also have to accept that apparently, any day now, I'm going to be one too." "Well, not a freak, exactly, but I do understand why you'd say that." Bill glanced sideways at Bart, then returned his eyes to the road in front of him. "There are some amazing benefits to being this kind of different, Bart, as you will soon find out." They turned a corner and pulled into the driveway of a modest-looking yellow ranch-style house. There were several large solar panels mounted visibly on the roof. And where the neighbors' yards were decorated with typical ornamental flowers, the front of the Flanagan home was different. Raised garden boxes filled with fruiting tomato, bell pepper, strawberry, and other edible plants dominated the space. Bill brought the car to a stop, turned off the headlights, and removed the key as he turned to face his son. "Why don't you put your things away and get comfortable, then meet me in the den? There are some important things we need to talk about." Bart reluctantly nodded his head as they opened their doors and headed for the side entrance, located beneath the carport. Bart walked into the mudroom, pausing long enough to wipe his feet, then proceeded through the kitchen and down the main hallway to his bedroom, where he gladly shut himself inside. The walls were decorated with framed prints of Oregon Ducks star football players. The window featured forest green and bright yellow curtains, and there was a matching quilt and pillow cover on his bed. A big, football-shaped rug decorated the middle of the carpeted floor. Wooden shelves mounted on the wall above a small glass and metal desk in the far right corner displayed his many awards, trophies, school, and scouting achievements. There were a couple of framed photos in the mix. One of him and Jack dressed in brightly colored swim trunks playing volleyball at the beach, and another of Bart with his mom and dad, all bundled up in thick hooded parkas, wearing goggles and holding ski poles, getting ready to speed down the slopes at Mount Hood. The stark contrast between the two lives made him think of Jack. We don't have time for a discussion. Pop needs to get busy finding a way out of that place for Jack. Bart tossed his backpack onto the bed and dashed back down the hallway, turning left at the kitchen, then to the open, carpeted staircase leading down to Bill's office. Yes, I'm afraid it is quite urgent. Bill's voice floated up to Bart's ears as he approached the den. We need an escape route as soon as possible. By tomorrow at the latest. The boy's physical safety is in jeopardy. Bart stood in the doorway, waiting for his dad to look up. The den was a warm and cozy space, an extension of Bill's office at the hobby shop. A couple of overstuffed chairs in time-worn burgundy leather were positioned in front of a big oak desk on which a brass and etched glass lamp sat in one corner. Notepads and pens and a large buttoned electric adding machine were arranged on the surface, giving the room a feeling of orderly clutter. There was a sitting area off to the right side of the room, where a gold and maroon print love seat and small coffee table provided a place for comfortable conversation. Bill picked up the coffee cup sitting on his desk and moved to that area, nodding at Bart to join him. Thanks, Will. I'll wait to hear back from you, he said, finally, ending the phone call. Who was that? Bart asked, flopping down into the love seat. That, Bill paused, was one of the magical freaky people who is going to help get Jack to safety. He winked at Bart and smiled just a little. I'm happy you're on top of that, Pop. Bart was slowly returning to his usual, jovial self. Mind if I text him real quick to find out how things are going? I'm pretty worried. Not at all. I'd feel better with an update from Jack, too, Bill affirmed. Bart pulled out his phone and composed a quick message. Hey, how's it going? Pop just arranged for that pizza we were talking about for tomorrow night. Not sure what time Mom wants to have dinner, but I'll let you know so that you can join us. He hoped Jack would understand the coded message, not wanting to be too literal in case Jack's phone was being monitored. Okay, we should hear back from him soon. Let's talk. Bart put his phone face up on the coffee table and turned sideways on the couch to face his dad. Yes, let's, Bill echoed. Where to begin? He paused and thought for a moment. As you already heard me tell Jack, I knew his dad, Ross, when we were kids in Ireland. We were best friends in primary school. As it just so happens, I was over there the day his mother went missing. We were 12 years old. He paused and looked at Bart. To make a much longer story as short as possible, jump forward to the summer of 2008. Ross and I have stayed in touch all this time through emails and phone calls. He had moved to Portland, was in the military, married with 3 small children, and life was treating him pretty well. I was still in Dublin, also married to your mom, and you were a 4-year-old little kid. I get a random phone call from Sir Edward one day saying he needs to talk to me right away. In person. He asked me to meet him at his home, which I did. And that's when he told me that Jack's dad, Ross, and his wife, Faith, had been killed in a tragic automobile accident, leaving all 3 kids orphans. I was devastated, of course, but Sir Edward's true purpose for our meeting was to ask if I would be willing to relocate to Portland to look into their deaths. Because, and this is where the magical element starts to come into play, he suspected the wreck wasn't an accident at all. He thought it might have been orchestrated. In other words, he feared they had been murdered. He stopped and stared intently at Bart. There was silence between them as the enormity of the situation settled over them. The blank expression on Bart's face gradually began to change, and he squinted his eyes together, shaking his head slowly from one side to the other. Murdered? Like deliberately killed? Targeted? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Bill's expression was grave. And since then, I have also discovered that it's no accident the 3 children were separated and sent to live with different families. But who would do that? Why would they do that? Poor Jack. Bart trailed off, staring at his blank phone on the coffee table. The who is still not completely clear, Bill said. I have my suspicions, but I've had to be very careful inserting myself into Jack's life as I have in order to investigate. I've kept my distance from Jack's aunt and uncle. I don't know much about them, but they are magic workers. I know that for sure. Sir Edward made all the financial arrangements. He purchased the hobby shop and set me up in business. He bought the house we live in and took care of all the necessary details to position me so that I could find out what was going on. The bottom line you should know is this. Jack and his siblings possess powerful magical abilities. Bart, individually, yes, but if their energies are allowed to combine, they will possess the power to form a very rare and unusual wizarding trifecta that will make them nearly invincible. No one knows exactly what forces they will be able to wield together, or what influence those forces will give them to alter world events. Someone wants to control and manipulate those kids and their powers, and that is very likely the reason behind Ross and Faith's murder. Bart was quiet for a long time before he suddenly smacked the palm of his hand against his forehead so hard it made an audible thwack. And now they're after Jack! He stood up and started to pace back and forth across the room. He doesn't even know about any of this, does he? The fact that his parents were murdered and that he and his siblings have these insane magical powers and all of that. Right? He stared at his dad, expectant. No, and we have good reason to believe Jack may be in real danger, though I'm confident no one after him would cause him physical harm. He is far too valuable an asset to risk damaging his abilities. But they could do other things. Kidnap him, place him in isolation where he has no contact with the outside world, cause him mental anguish. There can be worse things than bodily pain. He met Bart's stare straight on. There is some good news, however, and that is that we are not alone in this situation. No? Bart flopped down into one of the big leather chairs. No. And I'm thinking I might stop there for tonight. Let me see how long the next chapter is. All right, we've got just a few more minutes, and chapter 20 isn't super long, so I'll go ahead and continue on. Chapter 20, Vanished. Portland, Oregon, present day. Earl slowly opened the door to the basement bedrooms, convinced he had heard voices. Casting his eyes around, he saw an overnight bag laying open on the black metal bed, clothing strewn out all over the blanket. But his nephew was nowhere to be seen. He let the door swing the rest of the way open, not caring when it cracked loudly against the wall. Crossing the room in a second, Earl O'Brien opened the outside basement door and found Victor posted there, just as he had been all evening, Did he come out here? Who? The kid? Who else, idiot? Earl turned and slammed the door so hard the glass inset window rattled, threatening to shatter. He dashed back up the stairs, shouting all the way. Lizzie! Lizzie! Elizabeth O'Brien met him at the top of the staircase, burning cigarette in hand. What is it, Earl? She asked, clearly bored. She took another lazy drag on her cigarette. Earl pushed past her into the kitchen. Jack is gone. Lizzie spluttered, smoky saliva spraying across the kitchen counters. What do you mean, gone? Her eyes were wide and accusatory. I mean exactly what I said. He's gone. He isn't in his room, and Victor hasn't seen him either. Well, we had better find him quick. He can't have gone far. She inhaled long and deep on her cigarette as she walked to the dining room window, gazing out into the darkness. Little brat. Inez is going to be furious. No doubt, Earl agreed. His cheeks were flushed, and a light sheen was forming on his forehead. We need to be on that plane with him tomorrow morning. Lizzie turned and they locked eyes. I'll make some calls, he said. The Flanagan residence, Portland, Oregon. Bill's mobile buzzed violently on his desk, the loud vibration causing it to bounce around on the surface. He glanced at Bart, then quickly got up and crossed the room to look at his phone. Earl O'Brien? He asked out loud, a look of concern coming over his face as he picked up the device and answered. Hello, this is Bill, he said. No, he's not here. We haven't seen him since this evening when we dropped him off at your house. He waited for the response, his eyes widening as he glanced over at his son. I know Bart has been waiting for a text back from him. We were hoping he could join us for pizza at our house tomorrow night. Oh, you've got his phone. I see. Yes, I do know how kids can be. I hope he's not in trouble because he was with Bart and missed dinner. Yes, I understand about breaking the rules. So wherever he is, he doesn't have his cell. Oh, he left his backpack? That seems odd. He did mention thinking some guy downtown was following him earlier. Do you think there may be cause for concern? Bart had jumped out of the chair and was now standing next to his dad, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, anxious for more details. Oh, that's good to hear. Of course. I'll let you know right away if we hear from Jack. And you do the same, please. We'll be worried sick until we know he's safe. Okay. Thanks, Earl. Goodbye. Bill tapped his phone, then stood there, holding it, looking at Bart. Jack's gone. Not at home anyhow. And he doesn't have his phone. He must be on his way over here, Bart said. And since his jerk of an uncle took his phone, that would explain why he hasn't texted me back yet. I wonder why he would leave without his backpack, though. He knows he told him he'd need a go bag. Bill thought for a minute, then looked at Bart again, considering. Then he said, Just a warning. Things are about to get weirder for you. Bart raised an eyebrow, but Bill ignored him, set his phone down, then walked across the room to the floor-to-ceiling wooden bookcase covering the far wall. He reached above his head to the top shelf, where he withdrew an ancient-looking, leather-bound volume with ragged-looking pages sticking out from between the covers. Walking back to the love seat, he sat down and motioned for Bart to join him. Try not to wig out here, he said. Then he bent over and placed the book on the coffee table, allowing it to fall open to a seemingly random page. Bart watched curiously. The aged and crunchy-looking parchment was blank, no text whatsoever visible on the pages. Turning to his father to ask about that, he stopped abruptly, noticing Bill had closed his eyes, and the space between them was deeply creased, like he was concentrating intently. Moving his view from Bill's face to his hands, Bart watched as his dad placed his right hand directly over the book, allowing it to hover just above the surface. Where is Jack McPaden, and who, if anyone, is with him? He asked out loud. To Bart's utter amazement, the page responded to the question, automatically filling with words, as though someone was writing them with a quill and ink. The lettering was thick and script-like and flowed neatly in straight lines across the page. Jack is currently located at McPaden Manor in Dublin, Ireland. He is with Arthur Loyal. Bart read. Bill opened his eyes and sat back on the sofa, a slightly amused look spreading across his face. Well now, isn't this an interesting turn of events? Arthur Loyal, huh? Didn't know the butler had it in him. He turned to face Bart and almost laughed at the look of utter bewilderment on his son's face. What was that? What you did right there? How did you do that? Bart's mouth was hanging open, and he was staring down at the words on the page in disbelief. Oh, that? That was a simple locator spell. It's one of my abilities. And that's the end for today. Next time, I will be reading Chapter 21, Auntie Inez, Stockholm, Sweden, 2 years prior. I hope you've enjoyed my reading today, and if you have, please do take a moment to give me a thumbs up, because it really helps for people to be able to find my channel and be able to also listen in to the story. Subscribe if you haven't done that already, and please be sure to ring the little bell so you receive notification every time I upload new content, which I do 3 times a week, usually Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, sometimes Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but certainly 3 times a week. Take good care, and I will talk to you soon.